Welcome to the fourth class in the study of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras called the Sādhana Pādaḥ, or the chapter on practice. In this portion, I said the Yoga Sutras second chapter is divided into two portions. In the first portion, Patanjali lays the foundation for the famous Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 aspects or the 8 limbs of yoga. And then in the second part, he's going to actually talk about the various aspects of the famous Ashtanga Yoga. So we are at the last portion. This is the fourth class. It's divided 50-50. We are the last class for the foundation. So Patanjali is now going to say why practice yoga in its various forms. So yoga is not a single practice. It is different practices that you do with gradations. So you start with a good foundation and then you build it up so that your mind becomes still. So yoga is all about, it is the art and science of stilling the mind, but you need to have strong foundation. That's why tapas and all these things, santosha, tapas, shaucha, cleanliness, all these things, tapas is austerity. These are all important to still the mind. A mind which is always thinking about external objects can never become still. Patanjali also talks a lot about vairagyam, dispassion for things that steal away your mind. So that is this first. So the first portion is foundation. Why people suffer. The reason for our dukkha, suffering, is kleshas, deep-rooted imprints. Yoga works on erasing those imprints, and how dukkha continues across lifetimes due to the samskaras, imprints. Now we are at the important portion of the relationship between the Puruṣa, that is the real you, and the Prakriti and the liberation. So we are at that portion. Now, so this is a very important class. So there are 2 ways to study the Yoga Sutras. A lot of people, sometimes they come, oh, it's a nice talk, we'll just hear it's nice things, some stories. That's one way. But if you want to really get the benefit, one has to reflect on it and also ask questions. Why is my life this way? All that. So you understand the big picture of your own nature. And that's when it becomes a superpower. Okay. Now let us go to where we left off. Okay. So last time I gave, this example is then in Sankhya Karika, the example of the dancer. So this is how Sankhya Karika, verse 59, gives the example of Puruṣa and Prakṛti. So it's like not a story, analogy, but I'll tell this as a story. So in a kingdom, so there was the king and there were the courtiers, and the courtiers the kingdom was doing well, so the courtiers start to think, okay, we are the great ones, so we should have a celebration. And they to the king's court, they they invite a dancer and arrange for a dance performance. A very great dancer, very beautiful woman. So the courtiers arrange a dance performance, and the dancer dances to entertain the court in the presence of the king. The courtiers, one by one, they start thinking that the dancer is dancing for them. So the dancer looks at them, makes these gestures, and all the courtiers think, the dancer is interested in me. So this is how they start thinking. And the dancer is dancing. Eventually, through her dance, she reveals the true nature of the king to the court. So what she essentially reveals is that she's not dancing for the courtiers, she's dancing for the king. And once the courtiers realize this, slowly they start leaving. Okay, we've seen the dance performance, we kind of got carried away, we thought she was dancing for us, this beautiful woman. Now that's not the case, and the courtiers, they leave, and at the end she stops dancing once this is revealed. So this is how Prakriti works too. Prakriti is like the dancer. all these. The king is the only the sole person. King does nothing. He's just come, he sits there and he just sees. King is like the Puruṣa. All these courtiers, they also belong to Prakriti, but they are like the different buddhis, minds, that start thinking in the presence of the king. The dancer dances, but they start thinking, it is for me that she is dancing. So this is, if there were no king there to witness, there would be no performance. So this is what Prakriti is trying to tell the Prakriti itself, that is the Buddhi. So this is the profound statements. Tadartha eva drishyasya atma. The purpose of the existence of the scene, drishyam, is solely for the seer. Tad artham, for that purpose alone, the drishyam exists. Now, in the last class, Amy asked a very profound question. So why is this? So Puruṣas, the only important thing, why is this Prakriti coming, creating all this drama and going away? What is the need for this Prakriti at all? Puruṣa is the consciousness, the greatest thing. What is the need for this Prakriti at all? Why is it, it could just remain as Pradhana, the unmanifested, or Alinga, the one without a mark. Why is it manifesting itself into the shapes, creating all this confusion, making our lives miserable in the process? Why is this all happening? This is the most profound question in the entire of Sankhya Vedanta. Now, also, as I said, Sankhya and Vedanta, they look very similar, very, very, very almost the same. In fact, Vedanta just copies everything, most of the things from Sankhya. But Vedanta polishes it finally to say, what is the need for the Prakriti? So we'll see a few examples. I don't want to confuse you too much, but we'll see. So the entire thing is the Buddhi. Buddhi is the intellect's confusion. The Buddhi thinks it is the one responsible for consciousness by shedding light on everything. The example given, I just made this example. This is not there in the scriptures. So Puruṣa can be like the ultraviolet light. So I've shown it like a light, but think ultraviolet you cannot see. Now, when the ultraviolet light falls on certain fluorescent medium, think of this mirror. That's what we are. It's like we are like walking mirrors. Essentially, the mind is like a mirror. When the Puruṣa shines the ultraviolet light on this fluorescent medium, it emits violet or some other different colors of light. And this medium starts thinking, I am illuminating everything. I am the source of consciousness. I am the greatest thing. I can illuminate better. I can understand things better. I can illuminate the finest cracks in all these things. That is like a scientist thinking, I am the smartest person. So all these, it starts thinking, but it doesn't realize that it is not the illuminator. Something else is illuminating it. And that's its essence is always pure. So that's why in the Bhagavad Gītā it says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shunichaiva Shvapakecha Pandita Samadarshanaha. Pandita Samadarshanaha. Pandita, the wise people, they view everything as the same. What all as the same? Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane, like a Brahmin who is possessed of Vidya, knowledge, and Vinaya, humility. The Brahmin possessed of knowledge and humility, these are the qualities of a learned. Brahmin means a learned person. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi, a cow. A cow is considered a very sattvic animal. Very mind is very pure, sattvic animal. Gavi, Hastini, a female elephant. Shuni, a dog. Shvapaka, one who even eats the dog's meat. So all these people, for them, the consciousness is still the same. Their minds are different, but what their essential nature, the consciousness, is the same. Okay. Now comes the question that Amy asked in the last class. I cannot explain it fully. It's a profound question, but I'll try to give a glimpse of how these texts address this issue. Okay. Why is the Prakriti needed at all? So initially in the Sankhya, we've talked about this before too. There is what is called Prakriti Samya Avastha, which means balanced state, equality or perfect equilibrium. Our Samya means balance, Avastha means state, the state of perfect equilibrium. Now, Purusha, the example that's given in the Sankhya philosophy, Purusha is like a magnet. When the magnet comes, and the Prakriti is like iron filings. There are different ones, some fine filings, there are some which are bigger pieces, and some intermediate. Everything is there. Now, when the magnet comes closer, the fine, it's at a distance, the fine dust starts coming up. It gets pulled up by the magnetic force, okay, because it is finer, it's able to come up, and you see, that is the buddhi. So Purusha is like the magnet, and buddhi is like the fine dust. Purusha is all-knowing, it is the buddhi. And now the question is, who actually does the distinguishing? So who has to understand? So we are this entity. Which part of our entity has to understand our own nature? That is the buddhi. That's the finest aspect of Prakriti. So this intellect has to do the distinguishing. Finally, it should know, like the dancer revealing to the courtiers, they're all like the buddhis. They understand, so the dancer is not dancing for it. So the buddhi is like that. Here, the example is like fine iron filings. Origin of the confusion. So the both Sankhya and Vedanta, they say that it is our origin of confusion is infinite. We take birth cycles, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. And what happens in between? We are going through birth, death, birth, death, but suddenly there's pralaya, which means the entire Prakriti collapses into unmanifest, and again it comes. And in between, we are taking births and deaths. So pralaya, what happens? All our karma, they're stored as seed in some entity. The Vedanta calls it Karana Shariram, causal body. In Sankhya, so as I said, Sankhya and Vedanta, they're pretty much more or less the same. In Sankhya, it's stored in the finest aspect of matter, which is the buddhi, which is why the buddhi first, it feels the presence of the magnet and it comes. It is not demagnetized yet. So if the iron changes and becomes demagnetized, it won't get attracted. And that is the final kaivalya. Because it has the residual karma, and that is where it's stored according to Sankhya, it starts coming up. And the mistaken identity. The buddhi, which is the mechanical matter, wakes up due to this, and it gets confused. It looks at everything, reflection, it sees, I am the one who's consciousness. And the act of distinguishing, and the Prakriti goes through this endless permutations of the universe, like the dancer dancing, so that the buddhi can eventually experience enough contrast to realize its own mechanical nature. The buddhi ultimately distinguishes itself from the matter and the true Purusha. Okay, that is Kaivalyam. So here, first the buddhi rises, and next the ahankara, tanmatra. We saw all that Brahma, right? The Brahma is the ahankara. The tanmatras are the subtle powers of perception. All those emerge. And why does Prakriti act? If Purusha learns nothing and needs nothing, what does it actually mean when Sankhya says Prakriti acts for the sake of the Purusha? It means Prakriti acts to remove the superimposition it itself created. The blind mechanical nature of Prakriti operates so that its own evolute. The buddhi can exhaust all possible experiences. Once the buddhi achieves discriminative discernment, it realizes it is not the consciousness. Recognizing this, the buddhi drops its false identity, detaches, and just falls down or stops reflecting, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. So Prakriti then withdraws its manifestation for that specific intellect. And what is left is Purusha remaining in its true nature. That is called Kaivalyam. Prakriti doesn't exist to teach Purusha anything. It exists as a mechanical process that ultimately exhausts its own confusion, leaving Purusha in its pristine isolation. That's why in Sankhya it's called Kaivalyam. Kevala means aloof, alone. So it's Purusha, that's the whole thing. The fourth chapter is called Kaivalya Padah. Purusha stands alone without all this confusion. Okay, so that is um, um, the entire reason why Prakriti gets confused, and it resolves its own confusion. Purusha just like electricity, it just illuminates, it enlivens everything. Prakriti gets confused, removes its own confusion. Now, the points to ponder. If Purusha is eternally free, what is the point of Prakriti? So that we just saw, Prakriti exists due to ignorance. The whole entire, in fact, in Vedanta, it's called Mula Vidya, root ignorance, the entire Prakriti. And it's also called Maya. The ignorance causes confusion where the changing insentient mind is mistaken for the unchanging sentient Purusha. The entire drama of the universe exists only to resolve this case of mistaken identity. Prakriti's purpose is to facilitate the realization that Purusha was never involved in the drama. That is the real you. And once this realization occurs for a specific mind-body complex illuminated by the Purusha, the purpose of Prakriti is fulfilled relative to that particular association. Then why does Prakriti not dissolve into unmanifest after that? For that, the Patanjali gives the answer in the next sutra. Okay, why Prakriti itself does not disappear? Why is it again living and creating problems? The sutra is commonality of the Prakriti. Kritartam prati nashtamapyanashtam tadanya sadharanatvat. Beautiful sutra. Krita artham, for the one whose purpose is fulfilled. The liberated one here refers to the jiva or the entity. Although the scene is destroyed for the one whose purpose is fulfilled, for the jiva, the entity, the mind-body complex whose purpose is fulfilled, it is not destroyed. Anashtam. Nashtam means destroy, loss, all this. It is destroyed for the one whose purpose is fulfilled. It is anashtam, not destroyed for others. Anya means others. Anya sadharanatvat. Why? Because it is common to all of them. Now, this is an important sutra. On the surface, it looks like a cliche. Okay, I understand. So there is one mind. So I get this entity. Let's say there's one person, an enlightened person. That person gets liberated, but world continues to exist. World doesn't collapse, right? It's obvious. Why is Patanjali saying this? No, that's an important thing. Yoga philosophy believes that the physical world is real, unlike other schools, including Vedanta, where it is a projection. Even some Buddhist schools like Vijnanavada Buddhism, where the world is just a dream, like a projection in our mind. It is a figment of our imagination. And because everything, those Buddhist schools said, everything that we experience is in the mind. We all agree, right? So the entire world is a figment in the mind. There's nothing real. This is what they said. Patanjali refutes those schools of Buddhism and says, no, the physical world is real. Even if it is changing, it is not a dream in your head. It exists independently of your perception of it. That is why it says the Prakriti doesn't collapse, even if one person gets liberated. And then there's the other thing. So there is this Prakriti, and there's the mind-body complex and the Purusha. When one Purusha mind-body complex is dissolved, and the Purusha stands alone in Kaivalyam, there are other Purushas mind-body complexes which are going through this drama. So Patanjali is also establishing the plural nature of the Purusha. This is where yoga, I said yoga and Vedanta are almost same. This is where there's a slight difference. Then in Vedanta, there's only one consciousness. Here there are multiple consciousness. It's a small point, but it is still a difference. Okay, so now world is real and world as a projection. There's a very, very, very famous story in Yoga Vāsiṣṭha. And I don't know if I should tell the story because I can confuse you. So yoga says all this world is real. It's very easy. We can identify with the world. But then Vedanta goes and says, okay, this is also in the mind. Yes, Sumitra.
Sorry, Na, I did not understand the concept of multiple Puruṣas. Over here, does Puruṣa refer to the liberated Jivatma, or does it refer to the Paramatma? It is a little confusing.
Yes, okay. I'll clarify that. Okay. Puruṣa, okay, the way it is defined in Sankhya philosophy, this Puruṣa is consciousness that is all pervading. Okay, and it's also associated with a certain mind-body complex. That mind, it's like the buddhi. Okay, now when the buddhi, with the help of the electricity or the Puruṣa's magnificence, it understands its own true nature, the confusion stops, it just dissolves. No more for it to come up and do all that business. Then that Puruṣa just stands alone. Puruṣa was always alone, but it seemed like all this, like this. Let me see if there's a picture later for. There's an example of Kaivalyam. So you see, this is Kaivalyam. The red flower comes next to the crystal. Crystal does nothing. Crystal was just standing there. The red flower comes next, and the whole thing now, the crystal looks red now. It's making the crystal look red. Now, when the red flower is gone, the crystal takes a transparent shape. So the Puruṣa is not liberated. Puruṣa is always liberated. Prakriti comes close, creates confusion, and why it is pulled close is because of karma, the previous things that is stored. So it's getting attracted, then it's finding all this, it's finding its own true nature, and it's getting liberated, and then this Puruṣa stands alone. Like that, there are multiple Puruṣas associated with multiple mind-body complexes, and they're all there. That is how yoga and Sankhya explain. That's why there is Puruṣa Vishesha Ishvaraha. Then there's one special Puruṣa also called Ishvara, which is always standing alone, and it doesn't have any of the defilements or seeming defilements due to other interactions. Did it kind of make it clear?
So there is one very big crystal, which is Ishvara, which is unaffected by Prakriti. And there are other crystals, multiple crystals, which is the Puruṣa that you're talking about.
They are not affected also. See, this is the important thing.
They are also not, but they are not Ishvara.
They are not Ishvara. But there's all these other things come and create this confusion as though the crystal becomes red. It's a very subtle point. So again,
Ishvara different from the other Puruṣas, because if the other Puruṣas are also standing alone, it's a little confusing. Is it a fragment of Ishvara?
So
the other Puruṣas?
Okay, this is where now you're opening a huge can of worms. This is where all the philosophies start coming in. Now I have to explain Sankhya, Advaita Vedanta, Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, Dvaita Vedanta. Now, in Vishishta Advaita, there's only Brahman, one consciousness. In Sankhya, there are multiple consciousness. They're all existing parallel. They're all pervading, existing in parallel. In Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, all these parallel consciousness, they're like sparks. The example that Ramanujacharya gives is like a sparks in a fire. What is fire? It's a bunch of sparks, right? So they're all contained in this big thing called Brahman. And in Dvaita, their two are separate.
Okay.
So they're all. So let's not get into this because it'll cause confusion. For our purpose, there is a Purusha, my own problem, and I am that Purusha, and the mind, body, all that is Prakriti. If you understand that, that is good from yoga point of view. Okay. All right. So now I will probably let's carry over on. Maybe if I have time at the end. This is a very profound story. It's about multiple projections. So they talk about a dream within a dream. So I researched, and apparently the dream within a dream phenomenon is also real. So you can experience a dream within you're thinking of yourself sleeping in your dream, and while you're sleeping you're experiencing another dream. So that is a documented phenomena. And in Vedanta, the whole existence is such a thing. It is a projection on consciousness, like a dream within a dream. And that's what this story is about, a profound story. That is exactly what Patanjali is refuting. He says, no, your existence is not a dream. And he's refuting the Buddhist view. The Buddhists say everything that you experience in the mind, so the world is a figment of imagination in your mind. And Patanjali is refuting by saying, no, the Prakriti is real. Even if your mind shuts off, there is still a real matter that is existing. Okay, so we'll keep it at that. But the story comes in Yoga Vāsiṣṭha. When Rama is depressed, Vāsiṣṭha tells him about the true nature of the universe. Very profound story. But for now, I will skip because we have to cover quite a few things. Later, if we have time, I can tell. Now the question will come, which came first, Janma or Karma? I told you this because it's not demagnetized. The Buddhi comes up. It gets attracted to the iron filings, are attracted to the magnet. So the question is, which came first, the Janma, the birth, or Karma? Because we continue due to our bag of karma, birth, death cycle. There is a famous story from Mahabharata. So Krishna finishes the war. The war is over. So Krishna is finally getting ready to go back to Dwaraka, and he's just getting on the chariot. So one by one, Arjuna comes first, and he says, Krishna, I forgot Bhagavad Gītā. Please tell me again. So Krishna says, oh my God, why did I teach it to you? I thought you were a good student. And then he says, I'm not going to repeat the Bhagavad Gītā. I'm going to give you something else. And he talks about Anugīta. It's a different Gita. Gita means song. And then one by one, people come and start bugging him. At the end, this rishi called Uttanka, he comes. And Uttanka approaches Krishna to inquire. He was doing his meditation. He was totally cut off from the world. He didn't know what was going on. So he comes to Krishna and he says, oh, Krishna, some people are talking about some war and things like that. I'm sure you, the blessed one, because of you, you pacified everything. And I hope that all the wars were, any war that would have taken place has been averted, right? Krishna says, I'm sorry, that is not the case. I strove my best at first for bringing about a good understanding in regard to the Kauravas. When I could not by any means succeed in establishing them on peace, it happened that all of the Kauravas, their relatives, kinsmen, met with death. It is impossible to transgress destiny by either intelligence or might, or great rishi or sinless one. This cannot be unknown to thee. You know this, but you're asking me this, Krishna says. The Kauravas transgress the counsels which Bhishma and Vidura gave. So he tells all this. Then Uttanka gets angry. You are the Bhagavan. You know everything, but you induce the suffering. You are the one who caused the suffering. So tell me, why why did these people die like this? Then Krishna says it's their karma, and that caused this birth, and that's they were destined for that. But why did you give them a birth? And then it goes on like this, which came. So Krishna says, they got that birth because of previous karma. And why did they do the previous karma? Because of their janma, their birth karma, like that goes to the first. So the first birth, you being a malicious one, you gave them bad karma. And because initially the slate was clean, and you gave them bad karma randomly, and because of that they get carried over, and they added more bad karma, and eventually this situation happened. Then he says, I'm going to curse you unless, this rishi is telling Bhagavan, I'm going to curse you unless you give me a good explanation. And then Krishna says, this entire thing is anadi, it's infinite cycle, there's no thing like a beginning or an end. And he says, oh, Vasudeva said, oh son of Bhrigu's race, it's addressing the rishi Uttanka, listen to what I say in detail. Please accept my apologies also, oh thou of Bhrigu's race. Thou art an ascetic, you are an ascetic, you are a sannyasi. After having heard my words relating to the Atma, thou may utter the curse. You can feel free to curse me. But no man is able, by your little ascetic merit, you got carried away to put me down. You, with your little ascetic merit, you can't put me down. O foremost of ascetics, I do not wish to see the destruction of all your penances. Because of all the austerities, he's gotten power. And if you curse me, you're wasting all that. You have a large measure of blazing penances. You will lose all that. Thou hast gratified thy preceptors and seniors, O foremost of regenerated ones. Now I do not therefore desire the loss or diminution of your penances. And then he explains this nature of the Atma. At the end of it, Uttanka, he just bows down to Krishna, and then Krishna is again about to step into the chariot. Then Uttanka says, I would like one more thing. Poor Krishna, he wants to go to Dwaraka to attend to his kingdom, but one by one they are suffering. And then finally he looks, what do you want now? Please show me the Vishwarupa Darshana. And then Krishna shows the cosmic form. So Ishvara is the cosmos, the consciousness shining on the entire universe. So that is the story. So what it shows is this Janma karma cycle, the entire reason why this magnet, the fine filings first get attracted, it is because of this karma. It's a never-ending cycle. But once it's liberated, this doesn't happen. Okay. All right. So far, okay. Everybody? Yes, Līlā?
But with the story, Krishna didn't answer the question.
Krishna didn't answer the question? No, Krishna did answer the question. He just said it is anadi. So, okay, you can say that he had a quick excuse, because it's anadi means without a beginning. It's an infinite cycle going way further. So which came first, Janma or Karma? He says it's an infinite cycle. So he did answer, but he kind of, what can I say? He just gave the infinity is a good escape, right? If you say, oh, it's infinitely large, there's no bound, so you don't have to explain nothing. So you can interpret it whichever way you want. Krishna sneaked away, or you can say Krishna gave a profound explanation. You can assume whichever way you want. Okay. Then the relationship between the Puruṣa and Prakriti. Swaswami Shaktyo Swarupopalapti Hetuhu Sanyogaha. The cause of the union of the owned and the owner is to understand their respective powers. It's a very important sutra. Swa means one's own. Swami means owner. So what it shows is the owned Swa means one's own, means owned, one which you own. Swami means the owner. Each cannot act independently, and each on its own doesn't have any power. So electricity on its own has no power. A machine on its own doesn't do anything. When you connect the electricity to the machine, it starts working. So it's like that. That is why it's called Maya Shakti, power of Maya. Ishvara is just Brahman wielding the Maya Shakti. Ishvara, or God, is Brahman, the pure consciousness wielding the Maya Shakti. With pure consciousness alone cannot do a thing, because it wields the Maya Shakti. And what is this Ishvara? This is the cosmic mind, the consciousness shining on the entire universe, that keeps track of karma, all that things, actions, and it does things accordingly. Okay, we cannot escape that cycle. Swa is the owned, Swami is the owner. Sorry, this is not Shakti. Shakti is the power. Swarupa, the true nature. So the power of the owned and the owner. Upalabdhi hetuhu, understanding of the true nature. Upalabdhi, understanding, is hetuhu, sayogaha, is known through their union as the cause. So without the union, they cannot understand their own powers. So paradoxically, the very thing that binds us is also the tool required to liberate us. This is the important thing. That magnet, the fine filings, the buddhi, it is getting attracted, but then it also understands that it understands it is not the Purusha, so it then liberates itself. So the very thing that binds us is also the tool required to liberate us. Why is it called Hetu? Because, and Vachaspati Mishra says, the conjunction is the cause of knowledge. Without the mind, the Purusha would have no mirror in which to see anything, neither the world nor itself. The mind acts like a mirror. The irony, Vachaspati Mishra points out that the irony is that the same conjunction causes misery when ignorant and liberation when wise. And what are the respective powers? Swa Shakti, the power of the seen to manifest. Swami Shakti, power of the seer to witness. Both these are needed to achieve anything. Okay. Understanding of the true nature of the powers of the owned, that is the Prakriti, and the owner, is only known through their union. Each cannot act independently on its own, because each by itself doesn't have any power. Another analogy is black ink against a light background. The blank ink was on a dark background, it would have no meaning. Okay, so contrast. And in the Atma Bodha, there's a famous shloka. So we get confused. We do all this. It's like searching for a necklace on one's own neck. So there's a beautiful sutra. Atma tu satatam praptaha aprapya vita vidyaya tannashe praptavat bhati swakhanda bharanam yatha. Even though Atma is ever present, always attained, because of ignorance, it seems like it's not realized. On the destruction of the ignorance, the Atma seems like it is newly attained, like the missing ornament on one's own neck. It's always there. So that's another analogy. Okay. Now the Puruṣa Prakriti conundrum. It's the Puruṣa and Prakriti are needed for liberation, but it also causes confusion. So he says, Tasya hetura vidya. The cause of the union is avidya, lack of right knowledge. That I told you right initially. It is the mula avidya, maya. It is because of the ignorance, the karma, all that, the entire storehouse of karma, it's because of ignorance. That's why they say destruction of all this karma, the imprints you have, is from knowledge, the understanding the true nature. So the cause of the union is avidya, or lack of right knowledge. And avidya is beginningless, anahadi. just like the Purusha. In Vedanta, as I said, is called Maya or Mula Vidya. Purusha and Avidya are like light and the darkness. When you talk of light, you also talk of darkness, right? So that's how Vedanta explains it. We saw the example. The same problem happens again and again in the Puranjana Upakyanam. Do you remember there the story? Avijñāta, that is the Atma, pure consciousness. Then Puranjana is like the Ahankara, and Puranjani is like the Buddhi. The Buddhi is the very powerful, and she's accompanied by the mind and 10 servants. The 10 servants are the 5 Jnanendriyas, the organs, the power behind the cognition, sight, smell, all that, and 5 Karmendriyas, power behind the action, that is the walking, locomotion, speech, excretion, reproduction, all the power behind them. So, and Avijñāta keeps telling him, don't go into the 9-gated city. Remember the 9-gated city, 2 nostrils, ears, 2 eyes. So there are on the mouth 7 gates and 2 in the bottom. So 9-gated, body is compared to a 9-gated city. Puranjana always is looking for a nice, comfortable place to live, but he gets into a lot of problems. Avijñāta, that is the Atma, keeps telling him, hey, be careful, hey, be careful, hey, be careful. He doesn't listen. So it's all because of Maya. And there is also a, getting close to time, but there's also a very famous story to illustrate Maya. This story comes, it's in one of the Puranas, and it is a dialogue between Vishnu and Narada to illustrate Maya. It's a classic story that illustrates Maya as this one, the Mula Avidya, causing all the problems. So one day, Narada goes to Vishnu to show him the true power of Maya. Vishnu agreed to grant this request, but first asked Narada to fetch him some water from a nearby village because Vishnu said he is thirsty. So Narada didn't question, he didn't say, you are God, how can you be thirsty? He didn't question anything. He just went to that village and as requested, and he knocks on the door. And a beautiful woman opens the door. Upon seeing her, Narada instantly forgot his mission, why he had come to the village in the first place, and he's captivated by her beauty, which was the allure of Maya itself. Narada falls in love with her. Narada is a celibate sage. Think about it. And he ends up marrying her, settling down in the village. They had children together. Narada lived the life of a householder for 12 years, experiencing the full spectrum of worldly joys and sorrows, including the happiness of family life and the pain of poverty. Eventually, a massive flood struck the village, and in the ensuing chaos, Narada desperately tried to save his family, but he watched helplessly as the wife, the children, they were all swept away by the raging waters. Overwhelmed with grief and despair, he cried out for help. Suddenly, amidst his cries, he hears the voice of Bhagavan Vishnu saying, Narada, where is my water? I've been waiting for you for half an hour. Narada instantly woke up from his daydream illusion. He realized that that entire 12-year saga of his married life and the tragic flood all transpired in 30 minutes of waking time while Vishnu waited for the water. So this is the story Bhagavan uses this to illustrate Maya fully. So the beautiful woman is the Maya. Her beauty is the enchanting power of the phenomenal word that captivates the senses and the mind. Forgetting the mission is the root ignorance. Now, the moment Narada sees her and forgets its original purpose, which is to fetch water, the whole thing symbolizes the root ignorance. We forget our true nature. This is the fundamental ignorance that causes an individual jiva to forget its true divine nature and its eternal relationship with Paramatma or God. It's because it's a bhakti story. And the 12-year life as samsara, Narada's subsequent entanglement in family and all that thing, that is our cycle of worldly existence. Okay. All right. Now we'll come to the final portion, liberation and viveka khyati. Tadabhavat samyoga bhavo hanam tatrishet kaivalyam is explaining kaivalyam or liberation. As I said, kaivalya comes from the word kevala, which means aloof, alone. It means the Purusha standing in his own true nature without all these things coming near and making the whole thing look like the Purusha's color is different, like the flower we saw. In the absence of ignorance, tad abhavat, from the absence of what the avidya, mula avidya, samyoga abhavaha, in the absence of ignorance, the samyoga, the absence of the conjunction is not there. The union between the seer and the seen is not there. There is cessation of the mind. Hanam. Hanam means cessation. He doesn't say what. The mind ceases to operate because there's no need. That state is liberation. Once the mind has achieved the purpose, it just dissolves back into Prakriti, and the state is liberation of the Purusha from the Prakriti. Absolute freedom. There's no more suffering. It's called Kaivalyam, as I said, aloneness, sovereignty. There is nothing nearby. The Purusha it's always is there, but when all these flowers come and make the Purusha look red, give all this characteristic, then or the Purusha has this body, Purusha is intelligent, Purusha is tall, Purusha is short, Purusha is man, Purusha is woman, all this is colored by the Prakriti. But Purusha is just its consciousness, such Chit Anandam, nature. Okay. There is one more story, but first let me cover, we have 3 more sutras, and then there's a very interesting story from the Mahabharata. I'll see if I can cover. Viveka kyatir aviplava hanopayah. The method for achieving the liberation is by removing ignorance. Aviplava viveka kyati means uninterrupted, unwavering, direct discernment is hana upayaha, is the method for upaya's method. Hanam is to remove, is the method for removal of this root ignorance. It is or the achieving this liberation. Liberation is achieved by removing the root ignorance. So both are one and the same. Through removal of ignorance is the method is uninterrupted direct discernment. Viveka Kyati. This Patanjali uses several times in the Yoga Sutras. Very powerful word. Discernment. Viveka is discrimination. Viveka Kyati is direct from first-hand experience, knowledge, vision. Direct discernment. Constantly being uninterrupted. Aviplava Viveka Kyati. Unwavering, constant. That is what yoga provides. What is the Viveka Kyati? Discrimination, the knowledge from the seer versus the seen. How to get Viveka Kyati? Long-term. Aviplava means a long-term practice where one constantly rejects the identification with the buddhi. And that's the buddhi. That's what creates all these fake notions. I am rich, I am poor, I am not intelligent, I am intelligent, all that. And Patanjali talks about 7 stages of wisdom arising. Tasya saptada pranta bhumi prajna. Saptada, 7-fold. For the yogi who possesses the Viveka Kyati, Tasya means for that yogi who, because you have to, so that's why it's called Sutra. Sutra means what? It's a thread, suture, from the word suture. The Sutra, the word suture comes from the Sutra. This means a thread. It has a lot of pearls. So the previous pearl lends meaning to this one. So you have to understand this from the previous one. The previous one talks about Viveka Kyati, discernment. Now, for the yogi, Tasya, for the one who possesses that Viveka Kyati, Saptada Pranta Bhumi Prajna. The highest wisdom arises in the Prajna is the highest wisdom. Pranta Bhumi, it is the highest stage of Bhumi means ground. The highest wisdom arises in 7 distinct stages. Saptada means 7-fold, 7 distinct. Pranta Bhumi means the highest final ground of wisdom. Prajna is wisdom. It arises in 7 distinct stages. What are those stages? He divides the Vyasa divides it into 2 groups. Group A is completion of the action. Group B is dissolving the mind. Once you know who you are, the mind is also dissolved. First, understanding the nature of suffering completely. I know exactly what was causing me pain. Second, removing the root cause of suffering. I have destroyed the causes of my suffering: ego, ignorance, attachment. Third, clearly seeing the cure. Total freedom is no longer a theory, but a reality right in front of me. Fourth, mastering the means to freedom. Viveka Khyati is now achieved. Then, group B, dissolving the mind. Buddhi prepares to retire after its final job. Its job was to show my true nature as the Purusha. Then the gunas recede, mental patterns don't have a grip anymore. Purusha alone remains in its own true nature. And the final sutra in this first portion is the procedure for Viveka Khyati. I told you, right? Patanjali builds all the Ashtanga Yoga. Why do Ashtanga Yoga? Because to get Viveka Khyati. Why do Viveka Khyati? That removes Mula Vidya. And what does Mula Vidya do? That's the ignorance. It causes all this kleshas, suffering and everything. So he is now giving the final reason why you should practice Ashtanga Yoga to get Viveka Khyati. Yoganganushtat ashuddhikshaye jnanadiptihi avivekakyate. By the sustained practice of the various aspects or limbs of yoga, ashuddhikshayaha, that is the impurities are destroyed. Jnanadiptihi, the lamp of wisdom is lit. Avivekakyate. So there is a thing. Aviveka means that is without a. It's just aviveka means ignorance. Viveka is discrimination. Aviveka means lack of discrimination. Viveka means great discrimination. So the word means great, means negation. So which leads to great discriminative direct knowledge. Viveka Khyati arises. Okay, so that is why Patanjali has built up everything. So to tell, okay, this is the reason why you should do your yoga practice. That is the first portion. Okay, so far is everything clear? Yeah. So there is a story. I was going to tell you the story of the jackals, right? And so let's see. So there, in the story comes in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. Okay, you guys want to listen to the story before we have a few more minutes? Yeah. Yes. Okay. This comes in Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. So the context is the war is over, and now Yudhishthira has another problem. He's depression of victory. He's depressed because there are so many people killed. Yudhishthira won the war, but at a terrible cost. Millions of dead bodies, including his own kinsmen, elders. He was overcome with grief, shokam, lot of grief, and a false sense of detachment comes to him. Vairagya, detachment's good, but he gets a false sense. He tells Bhishma is lying on a bed of arrows. He told Bhishma, grandfather, I don't want this kingdom soaked in blood. I want to go to the forest, live like a gentle sage. Look, a warrior. Yudhishtiram means Thiram in Yuddham. He's given the name Yudhishthira, means one who is steady in battle, doesn't waver. But he wants to live like a gentle sage. Eat roots and fruits, no non-vegetarian food. Eat roots and fruits and practice non-violence. I want to be peaceful like a deer or a jackal, not like a killer like a tiger. Bhishma realized that Yudhishthira was confused. He was a king, Kshatriya, trying to adopt the dharma of a Brahmin. To show him that one cannot simply switch off their inherent nature, Bhishma told this story. So he is trying to tell him, you are like a tiger, not a jackal. Even though you want to be like a jackal, just run away, sneak away, and do all that. No. So in this Shanti Parva and the Anushasanika Parva, it has a lot of animal stories. That's where the Amar Chitra Katha books, Hitopatesha, and all those, some of you might have read as kids. It has a lot of stories from Mahabharata. Okay, so in a great forest, there was a tigress, and after giving birth to a male cub, it died very quickly of some illness. The helpless newborn, it was left alone, doomed to die of hunger. A female jackal who lived nearby, who had just given birth to her own litter, found the cub. Overcome with motherly compassion, anukampa, she did not see this cub as food, but as a child. She gently carried the tiger cub to her den, nursed him with her own milk, and raised him along with her own puppies. But the tiger gets confused, identity confusion. The tiger drank the milk of the jackal and ate what the jackal ate: scavenged meat, rotting carcasses, scraps, even some berries, all that. And he grew up playing with the jackal pups. But his body started growing larger and larger, stronger and striped, different from the jackals. Initially, they were all same, but then the tiger becomes bigger and bigger. His mind was completely conditioned by the environment, however. He did not know how to roar. He only knew how to yap and howl. He did not know how to kill. He only knew how to scavenge. He did not know courage. He learned to run and hide at the first sign of danger. He thought, I am a large jackal. One day, there was an incident where there was a mighty elephant deep in rut. That's a must, right? And wandered into this part of the forest. It was aggressive, tearing down trees and trampling bushes. Seeing this massive beast, the pack of jackals was terrified. Mother jackal signaled the pack to flee, and they all scrambled into their holes or hiding spots. The tiger, now fully grown in size, started to run with them. However, as he looked at the elephant, a dormant instinct, his true nature, Swarupa, suddenly woke up. The smell of the elephant didn't cause fear. It caused a strange excitement in the tiger. Instead of hiding, he stopped. He dug his claws into the earth and let out a sound that was a half growl, half bark. The growl instinctively came from within. He prepared to leap at the elephant. The mother jackal saw her son about to attack the elephant. She knew, although he had the body of a tiger, he still had the skills of a jackal. He did not know how to bring down an elephant, so she ran out to him and cried out, my son, don't be foolish. That is the slayer of enemies. We are jackals. It's our nature to run from such beasts, not to fight them. If you attack him without knowing how to kill him, you will be crushed instantly. Come hide. So the tiger reluctantly obeyed his mother and hid. But later the mother jackal realized she could no longer keep the tiger. He was becoming too dangerous to himself and the pack because his nature was conflicting with his upbringing. So she sat down with him and revealed the truth. My dear son, you are brave and you are very strong. You are not a jackal. You are a tiger. You are the king of the forest. You were orphaned and I raised you with my own milk. But now your nature is surfacing. You cannot live on scraps anymore. You cannot live in holes with us. If you stay here, my other sons, the jackals, will eventually resent you, or you will accidentally kill them in play. Go, leave this place. Find your own kind. Learn to be who you really are. Hearing this, the tiger paid respects to the mother and left the pack to reclaim his true nature, his true status in the forest. So Bhishma's message to Yudhishthira is, oh Yudhishthira, you too are like a tiger among men. Narapyagra. In the Suprabhatam also, Vishwamitra wakes up Rama this way. Uttishta narashardula kartavyam daivamanmikam. Narashardula means tiger. Oh, tiger among men, like that. Bhishma is telling Yudhishthira, oh, Narapyagra, tiger among men. Your nature is to govern, to protect and uphold dharma. You have been listening to the jackals of weakness and sentimental pity. You want to eat the scraps of a beggar's life in the forest. Do not be a jackal. Do not go against your nature. Race and roar like a tiger you are. That is your duty. So that is our nature is pristine, but because of this identification, we start associating with all these things and think poorly of ourselves. So that is the message of this story. With this, I'll stop the recording.